Welcome. As you know, we're in the series of different key processes and key things to understand in a consulting business. And we've been doing these webinars for a while. Today we're going to talk about offers, how important they are, how we always think of consulting and most things you do is like threading the eye of a needle. If you get it right, it's easy. And if you're the least bit off, you've caused the bending of the yarn or whatever in a much more difficult situation. And with me is Anthony Paluska, and I'm Dean McMann. We make these also available on the Consultant's Way website if you miss, and then we offer them several times during the week or so when they're live. So Anthony.
Yeah, Dean. I think it's a good topic to talk about. It's one that we work on with every client that I feel like we've ever worked on has an offer challenge of some sort, whether it's how does my current offer fit into my broader portfolio? How do I build new offers to create differentiation? How do I take what I believe I'm selling in the market and get my sales organization and the rest of my organization aligned to be able to deliver on those things? All of the above. What do you think the primary reason or reasons that we run into this situation in almost every embedded professional services organization we work with?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of drivers of that. One is they often have a sales organization. Yeah. And most sales organizations, sales motion are different than a consulting or professional service motion, and I'm sure we'll dive into that today. The second thing is they may not have experience aligning with the way executives make decisions. We always talk about the first thing they need to understand is whether to act, and then how to act, and then whom to act with. Often we intercept them at the end instead of pushing them to the beginning or intercepting them at the beginning, which gives us a lot more control and a lot of things. And I think the third thing is they don't separate it as a unique thing to create their offers and think about it and use some of the technologies like service chains that we created quite a bit ago but most firms use that enable both the sales force, the buyer, the connections, how to upsell, all to work in harmony. So I think it's just the complexity of it.
Yeah, I think being able to do it at scale requires you, and be able to proactively generate demand for consulting services at scale requires you to be deliberate about designing the offers, structuring them in a certain way, because you may have one or two people that began the practice or the business and could naturally come up with some of those things, and you kind of grew into having standard offerings that you could work with, deliver on, all of those things. But once you've enabled the masses to go out and sell these things, you need a structure and a way to do that. And then the other piece to that you were alluding to is that right, a lot of times, right, in these embedded professional services organizations, technology was the leader and pulled through services, right. And organizations are trying to find a way to flip that narrative. But when you're pulling through professional services, you don't need as many pre-baked offers, because it's about how to make the technology solve that problem.
The product is already pre-baked.
Right, yeah, the decision to purchase has already been made. So we can take your three categories and I guess dive through those. Maybe you want to begin with selling?
Yeah, so in North America, historically, you could break from 1945 on. We went through some phases of selling things. One of the first things was professional selling organizations created by NCR and IBM that actually went and got new accounts. But as the big tech firms came about, IBM, et cetera, a lot of salesmen became really involved in fulfillment. You're replacing that piece of equipment. So they're not really attuned often to selling at the executive level a idea or breaking new ground. So, but in PS or consulting, it's always that way. You're always having to get them to do something. Maybe they're not replacing something. Yep. They're having to take a new action. And the key there, I think, is that everything we do in the offer needs to enable that conversation to someone who, if they were in executive offices, their history might be a very defined product with feeds and speeds, and now they're in the conceptual world. And one of the things we do in the offer construct, the service chain, and by the way, we have a lot of information that can be obtained on this, and we have some materials that you can get access through both the Consultants Way and McMann and Ransford. But the way it's structured is we really want to have our conversations organized around an idea, right? So as an example, I need to get into an executive office and I need to have a conversation to lead to some revenue. If I can give a relatively well-packaged idea that is meaningful or provocative, that she will want to meet with me. And if I make that idea carry the meeting, it's no longer about me, the sales reps, and my sales ability to convince them. They will examine the idea with me. And we don't really have time to go through all the nuances of that, but that's a breakthrough thought, that in itself. So that idea needs to lead to an easy on-ramp project. So say the idea was, say we were working with a hospital, and the idea is your error rate in the operating room is always going to be difficult to manage down if we don't have starts on time, excellent training, and biological protection in the room, like UV lighting and other things that all work in harmony, but they're all different, right? None of those sound the same. So you would package those under, we can drive your error rates down and drive your revenue up and blah, blah, blah. So if you have a lot of operating rooms and it's a mess, then you might take that meeting. Now, when I'm in that meeting, I want to make the on-ramp to the first thing easy. So I don't want to sell them into fixing 65 operating rooms. That's a long sales cycle. We're going to get technical buyers. It's going to be complicated. What I want them to do is say, hey, do you believe you could drive an extra $1 million and drive your risk down? No. Hey, what if we piloted this? Or what if we went and took one operating room and gathered the data and showed you how you could do it differently? But something small that a few executives together might want to buy, and then prove out yourself and go down the road. So I think that's the thing with sales reps. You can't just leave it that I hope they're successful. You got to be deliberate. You got to work it. You got to organize it, and everything is so they have more. And then you got to, and this is something you've been particularly good at forever, you got to check on it really closely till it works. Yeah. Right? You got to be really like, you had your first meeting with this offer. We had 5 meetings with the offer. How's it resonating? How's our messaging? How about the material we brought you? Another thing is, don't go in with a presentation. Go in with a whiteboard or a piece of paper, because that makes the executive feel like she's talking to an executive, right? Whereas a presentation is about a product.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and kind of one thing that you alluded to it there, and we always find it, I mean, it's counterintuitive to some extent, right? When we're trying to get a new part of the organization that's unfamiliar with selling professional services, selling these sorts of things, to bring these offers to market and to lead with these kinds of offers is how do you start with something small and digestible so that they can position the idea in a way that we're truly meeting the buyer where they are in the process, rather than the tendency we always seem to find, right, everybody has, when they're in that motion and they're trying to sell these things, and there's so few opportunities to have a conversation with a qualified buyer, that you want to jump to selling the thing that you ultimately want to get them to do. Redo 65 of their operating rooms. Yeah. Right, and so by packaging and building the offer in the way and saying, right, the deliverables of the professional services engagements will link together and lead us to that end outcome. And you have to have faith and believe in if this idea is truly compelling and you can get them to make that whether to act decision on whether or not we even want to explore this, then we're changing the type of conversations we're having. Our close rates increase, and trust that the structure of the offer will pull through the revenue that we've always tried to sell to, right? We've always tried to like force fit and sell the big, right, the elephant hunting or the whale hunting. Yeah,
we always talk about that being, don't make them jump off the cliff. Two things happen. You lengthen the sales cycle. We can shorten it with a small deal. It's like paid for sales time. A small deal, and the consultants will carry the weight. And we're not talking about how they all work together right now, but that can work very smoothly. The other day, I'm in a meeting with a client in Tampa, and in the meeting is someone we helped maybe 15 years ago with these concepts in an embedded big consulting firm. And she said her whole career has been made by these concepts of offer and idea selling. And she was a salesperson. Mm-hmm. And so I had her talk about that, and it was and it didn't hit her right in the first time because she wanted the big deal. Yeah. Right? That's, how do I make my comp plan? But she goes, after I believed and did it a little while, man, it's fundamentally different. So even if you don't have the complete great structure of an offer, if I was in sales, what's the crystallized idea, and how can I get them on the road in something simple to buy? Yeah. Right. Yeah. But let's talk a little bit about the offer structure.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to go because making all of that work, you can sell an idea, you can go through that process, but if the offer is not structured in a way that logically pulls through the next piece of that engagement that gets to the 65, you're going to lose the share of mind of the sales organization, of the entire organization, because it's difficult to deliver on those repeatably and with such high quality that, as you have an entire team going out there, that you always lead to that end outcome. So you mentioned a little bit, start with something small and structure it in that way and then prove that out a bit. And I talked a little bit about, how do you embed some linkages, as we would call them, within each of those projects to tie one to the other. Maybe, I'm sure you've got some examples of, different ways to get started, different middle proof projects and where to go from here.
Let's lay out the structure for a second. And again, there's lots of material we have you can download and look at. But all service chains, every offer we've done, and we've done over 1,000 offers, is structured with a entry project, easy onboard, that proves you have the disease. Right? That's all that's supposed to do is, yes, what we thought you had and you thought you had here. Then you want to prove you can get healthy. So you take a small thing and you prove it. Those are connected logically. You start selling the proof project in the first steering committee of the entry project. Yes, you have the disease. I believe it could be fixed. Why don't we, if we're doing operating rooms for a second, why don't we take one operating room and fix it and prove it before you do a rollout? And then the fix, which is the third project, linked is logical because I've proved it can be fixed. Now let's go fix them all. Mm-hmm. Manage is at the end, and we think anytime you fix something, you should have a contract to come and make sure it stayed fixed. Yeah. And that will open the door for more work, obviously. So that's the structure. And we like it fully baked, right? Actually, the thing that can be the loosest is the fix, because that's what we're already good at. But man, you need to know how that linkage is going to work, how big that first project, and the first project has to be easy to sign. It's not even important you make a margin on it. It's important they write a check. And then how's the proof project going to be pulled through? All the way to, what do you say in the first meeting? How do you get a stakeholder meeting to work? All in one offer, delivered so that everybody knows what they're doing. Yeah,
so the offer, as we've thrown the word around and everybody uses it slightly different, We've got people that use it for this purpose and offer like a deal or this is a promotion or something like that.
Or it just means we bundled something together.
Exactly.
Hey, a solution is, you remember the famous, one of our partners was in the restroom at a client to prove that everything's called a solution. She brings the toilet paper dispenser back into the meeting and goes, hey, here's a solution. Hygienic solution.
Right. Yeah.
It's not a solution.
Yeah. So, but the offer, as we're talking about it here, is everything from the messaging, the idea, and how we talk about all of that, all the way through to ultimately what you're selling at the end of it. It's not just what we're pulling through at the end, the fixed project, as you talked about. And we've got examples, and we probably won't dive into all this detail today, but maybe for another conversation where you might have 6 or 7 ideas and entry points that ultimately lead to the same fixed problem that we have to
the octopus.
The octopus that continues to evolve.
And absolutely.
We do new things as the market changes.
Depending on where the buyer is in their life cycle, depending on their strategy, depending on which piece. But and that's a very interesting thing. We had that a lot in the payer market, where it actually came down to the same thing, right?
Yeah. So an offer or that idea could commoditize, or we could go through the marketplace, but we don't actually have to change fundamentally what we're doing at the end of it as quickly as we have to change and recycle our
Yes. Refreshing the message and looking at it from as the market's evolved, you can refresh without changing your face. The other thing is, if you look at your account journeys, right? So we think of an account journey as what do we want them to buy over time so that we end up where we want to be. So a lot of big consulting firms have outsourcing. They want you to end up in outsourcing. But offers populate that, and then you got to decide, do I need where do I need intimacy offers, offers that work just with the executives. We have a thing called the safety line. And then where do I need high value offers that make me a lot of money? And then where I need offers that are in between the two but connect me and my tissue to go on. So that's your portfolio in one way, but every one of them uses the same technology. It's just the topic, right? And you mentioned commoditization. Another thing we've got to just understand is they're kind of 4 stages. Education, that's the first stage, something new nobody's done. Second stage is, hey, you're trying this, but you're not being successful. We're better. Use us. We're more proven. Third stage is you fail all the time. That's because to the customer in this topic, and the topic might be, let's stay with healthcare. Rev cycle, been worked on forever. You're in the third stage. It's not working.
Yep.
And the reason it's not working is you didn't do it right. Right? And the fourth stage is get out. Right? So all these things begin to go together, but I think the important thing to us today is they all build off the same central building blocks of offer structure and how you sell an offer and how you take the customer on the offer journey. And then that fits into and if you can do that well, you have a lot of freedom to run your business.
Yeah, it becomes portfolio management in that aspect and looking at all your offers, right? The decision to make a new offer, the decision to sunset an offer, to do all of those things becomes very similar to how you'd run like an R&D type function or process. Yeah. And so with all of that, the benefit to it, right? And as we've seen this, the benefit that I feel about this process is we can go through 6, 7, 10 different front ends to an offer that takes some prep work, but it is in no way revolutionary and a huge lift to kind of completely transform what we deliver, our core set of capabilities within our organization, any of those things. It's just different entry points. So, there's this, as we throw out 5, 10, 15 offers that you might cycle through over a period of time, it's not like building 5, 10 to 15 products during that period of time.
No, absolutely not.
But it follows the same kind of methodology, but it happens in much faster cycles.
And if you get good at it, it really frees you to run. One of the 4 or 5 things that frees you to run an effective business, you touched on, and we can kind of end on this and take questions, but this difference in the front end, often you'll give a client choices because you have multiple front ends. Hey, are you the kind of company that would do best if we got all the executives together and did a 2-day session so that you had buy-in on this important thing which might cause a transformation? Or are you a data we're going to go gather some data and prove to you the problem? Or, and I have one of these right now, you don't want any of that, you just want to run. I'm still not going to let you run, even though you think you want the big project. I'm going to force you to, in this case, a 2-week review so that we can lower your risk and our risk on the implementation by understanding everything, right? And that 2-week, in this case, that 2-week review is going to be really validating. Are your people bought into this change? How big of a difference is it for you? And what kind of data do you actually have now that can be used in part of predicting the change values? But yeah, that's exciting.
No, so, and to that point, right? I have I guess pitfalls or potential things, right? I have a client right now that, and a lot of technology first organizations, I think, fall into some of this challenge, which is a lot of the things that you're defining as the entry project, whether it's a workshop, whether it's whatever those things are oftentimes given away in the sales cycle in the interest to say the first part of the deal is in a good situation a proof of concept or something like that, right? Where there's professional services and there's advisory type offerings that have to help get us there to make that work, which is the prove it aspect of it that will then allow them to scale. But there's work to be done on the front end, and when the sales organization sees it, the professional services organization sees it, if the client is not paying for that initial project, even if we're not making any margin on it, right? If the client's not paying for it, they're slow to act, they don't do their part, and it never yields the results that we
most
see.
Important thing in the world on getting started is make sure they pay for that. Yeah. Because if they won't pay for it, that tells you something. They're not really that interested. Yeah. And it's good for management to know that we thought we had these leads, we don't. Yeah. And to be honest, you won't do as good a job if it's not paid for. Yeah. It'll be wedged into a bunch of other activities. I mean, I've seen a lot of deals go bad because we gave it away they didn't value it, and we didn't do a good job.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we could have very simply done some design effort or some of that on the front end with a small paid for engagement with the right people from their end, the right people from our end, so we can do it that
and
way.
it's literally, I love this, it's literally making them do the PO process. I don't care if it's $1.
Yeah.
Forces them to say, someone's going to approve this, it's real, right? If it's not real, you're just filling your pipeline with stuff to have stuff in your pipeline.
Yeah, and I think it's all symptomatic of the organization views the offer as the fix-it project, not of the entire journey that the customer has to go
Or
on.
if it's wrapped around a product, they just view it as, hey, we're just selling a product, and that's the road to get there. When I as you know, I ran a large software company years ago, and one of the first things I changed was every one of these is going to have a paid for front end, even before we got a paid for small and front end project, because we had lots of pipeline, but no deals, and it fixes that. Yeah. So anyway, I think that's a pretty thorough introduction to offers, and we appreciate you guys attending. If you have any questions, yeah. So thank you very much.